Hello, beautiful being. Welcome to this masterclass episode. In this episode, we're going to be discussing Achamoth and the mother wound. And if that sounds completely foreign to you, that's okay, because we're going to walk you through every single piece and part so that you can fully understand this framework and apply it to the work that we're doing here together, which is really about integrating the masculine and the feminine. And in order to work with those energies, we must deal with the wounds that most of us have, which are the mother and the father wound. So in this class, we will be discussing and moving into understanding the narcissistic wounding that has plagued our society through the Gnostic lens of Achamoth and practicing radical acceptance as the path towards wholeness. I'm so excited. This is going to be a deep dive, so make sure you have a drink, make sure you have notes if you want to take notes, a notebook and pen, and we're going to get right into it. So as we step into this portal together, I just want to invite you, before we begin, to take a moment to drop into your body. Maybe you do this by closing your eyes slightly, inviting in presence with your breathing, placing a hand on your heart, a hand on your belly, creating that connection to the body. And just notice what's here right now. Whatever you're feeling, whether it's anxiety or curiosity or skepticism or hope or excitement or exhaustion, whatever it is, it's welcome here in the room with us. And if it's showing up here today, it's likely the part of you that really needs the information and the transmission that we're going to share here today. So let's just bring a moment of presence and recognition for the work that our body does for us on a daily basis, but also in the way that it will synthesize this information and allow us to utilize that for the highest good. Really just breathing with that intention here, grounding it in, feeling it in the body, recognizing the power and the momentum of what we're building here together. Beautiful. Love it. Love tapping in here with you guys. So, if you have been following my content, you know I talk a lot about the mother wound, about narcissistic family systems, about fragmented identity, about emotionally immature systems. But let me just bring to the forefront here, one of the core principles that we work with here is that there are no villains, that everything is an initiation, that everything is part of the process, part of the experience, part of the interface that is our soul. And so when we're talking about the mother wound, this is really important to bring up the context of where we're talking about it from. Because we're not talking about it from blame, from the perspective of blame and needing to assert justice. When we speak about the mother wound and working with the mother wound, we're beginning to understand the infrastructure into which we were born. the infrastructure in which our society thrives upon, capitalism. Right? So when we're talking about actually experiencing the mother wound, we're not saying that the mothers are bad people. We're actually pinpointing the root of the problem, which is that hurt people, and hurt societies create hurt people. And emotional immaturity hurts us all as a collective. It's not bad or wrong, there's value in it, right? Without recognizing this, we cannot say or assume the statement that wounded mothers create wounded children from a state of neutrality or objectiveness. We're not saying that wounded mothers create wounded children from a space of blame and wanting to blame the wounded mother. And this is a nuance that I'm pointing out here because it's really important in actually being able to fully rise above the wounding of your childhood. And that's a core component of the work that I do, that I guide clients through, of what we do inside of the den. And so I really want to bring that to the forefront because what we're recognizing is a systemic happening that is purposeful. And when we can see it from that perspective, we can be a little bit more objective about it and actually understand the energy and the way that it's playing out so that we can understand energy and reality creation as a whole to then create the reality where we find freedom from these experiences. And beyond even freedom, we find integration, which is much more valuable. When a mother is operating from her own narcissistic wounding, whether that be intentional, whether she's overtly narcissistic, or if she has narcissistic adaptions from her mother wound or her generational wounding, when a mother is acting from that space, from the wound, this goes for anyone, when we're acting from the wound, we cannot provide the necessary exchange of balance in relationships. And so, particularly in mothering, what this is called is good enough mothering. So, what is good enough mothering? It's the ability to actually mirror the child accurately and see them as they actually are. It's the ability to attune to the child's real needs instead of projecting the wound onto the child. It's the ability to hold the child's big emotions without collapsing or retaliating verbally, physically, emotionally. Good enough mothering is the ability to reflect back the child's inherent worthiness, which basically just means creating unconditional interactions, which means being open and available to the child no matter what state they are exhibiting. Okay. As I'm saying this, you may even identify, like, wow, I didn't really get that as a child, or wow, I didn't realize like that's what a mother is supposed to be, right? But the lack of this happening, so when this does not happen, one moment, we will get the thing for the light. Sorry about that. My cat went onto the dashboard of my computer. So you got to just show. All right, we're back. Back and we're better than ever. Okay, so when the mother is fragmented, when you have a fragmented relationship with the mother, when the mother experiences her own mother wound or father wound and never heals it, when that fragmentation happens and it is not resolved, the child then develops what psychology calls a false self. So essentially what happens is you learn to perform who she needs you to be. So you fill whatever emotional or physical role is missing from your mother. And it's a form of emotional incest. And you end up suppressing your real feelings and your real needs. And you put on this false masking. And you become hypervigilant to the emotional state of your mother. You might have a mother wound with your father. You might have a father wound with your mother, okay? These are energies that live within us, both the masculine and the feminine. And until we resolve that friction within ourselves, we cannot come into divine union, which is the space from which all of creation truly flows effortlessly. Because of your hypervigilance and focus on the mother, on the masking of yourself and the pleasing of someone else, you learn that your worth is conditional on meeting the need or filling the gap or being there for her, right? Or silencing yourself in order to avoid a bad mood from her. And this ends up creating different aspects of the self that come forward to interact in these situations. In IFS, internal family systems, you can look at them from different perspectives, like protector, or, they have different ones for based on what role it's playing for you. And I found that categorizing them in this way is really helpful so that when you are doing this work, you can learn to meet the needs of all of the multiple selves that you end up creating, because that's what you end up doing. You split into multiple selves, you fragment into different aspects of yourself in order to find peace or safety in harmful environments. And that's the difference between the real you and the performing you. And this is an uncovering, it's an unraveling. When you see it, when you finally see it, it is an unraveling. It's not something that you're just going to be able to, oh, I see it, it's gone, it's done with, I dealt with it. No, it lives in your nervous system. It's not just in your mind or psychological. And so we actually have to address this on a somatic level. And that's really what all of the resources in the Dragon's Den are here to support you in doing. This fragmentation is what I call narcissistic wounding. Okay. Now, people who are not narcissists necessarily can embody this energy, this narcissistic wounding, and that's how the mother wound actually perpetuates itself. That's how it becomes generational. So you're not necessarily a narcissist, but you were wounded by narcissistic dynamics that create that split, that fragmentation, which is really just a mirroring of that original narcissistic wounding, because that's what we do. That's what things do. They replicate, they evolve, they expand. What most people do not understand, as I've said, is that this fragmentation lives in your nervous system. So it becomes a somatic reality for you. And because it is a somatic reality, you, on a body level, have a habitual pattern of feeling like it's not safe to be fully yourself, or like you have to split off parts of you in order to survive, leave them, shed them. You have to kill your ego, right? All of these narratives are actually the echoes of narcissistic wounding in your nervous system. Your body feels like love is conditional based on your performance. And so you, in order to receive love, perform. And it's an addiction, essentially, that your body has to break or rewire or relearn, repattern. Your body also feels like your real feelings are too much or not enough or wrong, and so you often suppress them or keep yourself in loops or keep yourself so distracted that you don't allow yourself to actually identify and work with the energies that are present. That is why it is so important to do the work, and no one can make you do the work. You have to be the one to sit down and actually take the time to be with yourself, to sit with your body, to understand your psyche, and to rewire these patterns on a nervous system level. Because even though you're an adult now, even though you may have left your original home, or you may not be in contact with the original person who implemented the wounding, imprinted the technology for the wounding into your nervous system, even though you know that intellectually it wasn't your fault and that you are a whole individual human, your nervous system may still be operating from that fragmentation. And so you might still shapeshift depending on who you're with, or you might struggle to know what you want or need or feel. You might feel like you have to perform in interactions instead of just existing and being yourself and moving through the world in a way that feels fully yourself. And you might even feel like there's a real you hiding somewhere that you can't access, that you have to do another meditation, or you have to do so much in order to get to this real you, right? And that's really a false premise. It's a false perspective, ineffective way of going about getting the solution that you want. It is a Achamoth energy. Okay. And that's what we're here to understand, really break down and work with today. And hopefully, this will give you a framework for actually working with this energy as it arises and as you continue to spiral and weave new webs and move on from old spirals, building upon the last, utilizing it all to create a really solid and beautiful foundation for yourself and your life and your experience, and create so much generational wealth in that way. So now that I've said all of this, okay, we're going to pause, we're going to take a breath. What is coming up for you? What feelings might you be feeling? What patterns might you be recognizing yourself in? Do you feel a sense of recognition? Like, yes, this is my experience. Yes, you just named something I didn't have the words for. Are we feeling a sense of grief arising? Maybe like, wow, I can't believe that I've been living this my whole life. Like, wow. Maybe a sense of resistance, even like, I don't even want to believe that this has impacted me that much, or I don't want to believe that my mother wounded me or played a role in the passing down of this generational gunk. Maybe there's a sense of relief for actually finding words and expression of what this process actually is and how to work with it. Whatever is coming up for you is beautiful. I invite you to share it with me, share it in the chat. But most of all, take it for yourself, because this is the starting of your path. Whatever you're sensing arise in your body right now, whatever is coming up for you, that is the first brick laid on your path. And it's time to step on it, walk on it, work with it, move with it, and trust that your body is giving you exactly what you need in order to continue in your expansion. Now, if you're like, Achamoth, what the heck? Who is that? What are you even talking about? Well, this is what's really wild. So, over 2,000 years ago, the Gnostics actually mapped out exactly what I've been describing to you, this mother wound, this narcissistic wounding. It didn't necessarily have the language of narcissistic wounding or like attachment theory or a false self, right? But one of the most prominent stories was the Sophia and Achamoth story. Now, you should have already by now watched the Sophia Arc Masterclass, so you have a background on Sophia. But once you begin to understand this story, the Sophia and Achamoth story, you're going to begin to see the map of your own fragmentation and return to wholeness on a deeper level, in a more clear way. It's going to allow everything to click for you, I promise. Because the Gnostics understood that something happening psychologically is mythos, is part of the journey. And what modern psychology is now catching up to is that this fragmentation, this process, this character arc, this mythos isn't a mistake. And it's certainly not about fixing yourself. It's about inviting in radical acceptance of all the parts, of how to work with all the parts, even the wounded and performing and fragmented ones, even the ones who have wronged us and hurt us. And in order to actually create trust and work with honor and truth and recognition in the higher energies, we must be equipped with the wisdom to work with all levels of creation. And so that's kind of what working with the mother and the father wound is. In this series, we're going to talk about the Achamoth and as the mother wound, and then the demiurge as the father wound. But all of these are aspects of Sophia. Achamoth is an aspect of Sophia. The demiurge is an aspect of Sophia. Fragmented and distorted, yes, but an aspect nonetheless. And so it's really valuable to look at these different mythological structures to be able to understand our psyche and really work with ourselves on a higher dimensional level. So let me tell you the story. And as I do, I want you to notice where you might be at in this story, because this is a living mythos that moves through humanity, that moves through the collective, and we all experience it in some way, shape, or form. Whew, okay, so deep breath. Let's ground in. Fully be prepared to receive this information. Allow your body to open to receiving this information. Feet on the floor. Lengthen your spine. Open your heart. And as I speak, just notice what sensations arise, where you feel it, where your body might want to move. If anything begins moving intellectually for you. Let's just take one deep breath. Whoa. Okay, so in the beginning, there was the pleroma. This is divine fullness, absolute wholeness, the source of all that is. And from the pleroma, divine consciousness emanated in pairs. We call these syzygies. They're masculine and feminine principles in perfect balance. And one of these such emanations was Sophia, which is reflective of divine wisdom. It's the ultimate feminine principle. Sophia, in her state as a syzygy in the pleroma, was whole. She was complete. She was undivided. But she had a longing, a desire to know herself more fully, to experience creation in a way that wasn't possible in the pleroma's perfect wholeness. So she intentionally descended. And this is the thing that some interpretations might shift. I see it from the perspective that she intentionally descended, that this is a natural process of creation. But some perspectives position it as if she was cast out or cast down. This is where the story of Lucifer, the fallen angel, comes from. Okay. But the clear distinction that I want to make from my perspective is that Sophia was not broken. She did not make a mistake in descending. Okay. Some Gnostic texts will frame it that way, but seeing it from that perspective isn't helpful for what we're doing here. So I don't want to frame it in that way. This is a natural phenomenon that happens because consciousness wants to experience itself through limitation, through matter, through embodiment. And so in the descent, Sophia fragmented. She fell into the realm of matter and what the Gnostics call the Kanoma, means emptiness, and the realm that's ruled by the demiurge and the archons. And in her fragmentation into this realm, two aspects of Sophia emerged. She had Sophia, the higher Sophia aspect, the part that remained connected to the pleroma, to divine memory, and to the knowing of wholeness. And she had Achamoth, which is lower Sophia. And this was the part that became trapped in matter and fragmented, suffering, exiled from her true nature. So essentially, Achamoth is Sophia's wounded aspect. It's the part that feels separate. We'll go into that as well. It's the part that feels separate from source, from something bigger. It experiences grief and longing and terror. This version believes that she's been abandoned and tries desperately to return, but doesn't know how, doesn't have faith, doesn't have trust. And so because of that fragmentation, she creates out of her wounding instead of out of her wholeness. And she generates distorted forms. And so the way that I see it is Sophia was in the pleroma, in the heavens, essentially, with her divine syzygy, which was Christos. And in her descent, she created a fragmented aspect of herself as a reflection of the fragmentation that exists on this realm. Natural process. And in that fragmentation, that mirrored aspect of herself then creates distorted forms. So Achamoth is really the one who creates the demiurge, which is the masculine aspect of the divine syzygy. So Sophia existed with Christos, but when she came to this realm, she saw herself in existence really with Achamoth and the demiurge, because that's the divine syzygy that rules this realm. They're not bad, they're not wrong. It's important to know their energy so that you can work with them and or create standards and boundaries around that energy so that you're able to ascend psychosomatically to higher realms of being. And it's about being able to hold the polarity of both, because being able to master energy means being able to master it on all levels of being. So even though Achamoth perpetuates suffering through her fragmentation, that worldview is valuable in some respects. But I'm wondering, does this wounded aspect, does it sound familiar? Because it's exactly what happens with the mother wound. Before we go into the details of that, I want to just share briefly. These are the 7 stages of the inner Sophia myth, just as a recap. And so when Sophia is descending, she goes into the abyss, and you see right before the abyss, there's helpers that show up. And so Achamoth and the demiurge are essentially these helpers that show up to support you in rising back into your power. And they are not meant to rise with you. They are meant to act as an anchor. And so they are important, right? So we can see the 7 stages here. I just want to share that briefly. When your mother, okay, so I want to kind of break down the psychological mystical bridge because we have a very mythos oriented story with the Sophia and Achamoth descent story, right? And I want to show you how this practically applies to the mother wound. So, when your mother is operating from her own wounding, from her own Achamoth aspect, from that fragmented, wounded self, she cannot transmit Sophia, which is the vibration of wholeness, to you. She can only transmit what she has, which is fragmentation. So let me be really specific about what this might look like. The narcissistically wounded mother who embodies Achamoth energy transmits conditional love. Might sound like, I love you when you make me look good. I love you when you meet my needs. I love you when you don't challenge me. I love you when you do what I want you to do. This is Achamoth's desperate, grasping, trying to fill the emptiness that they feel inside by utilizing the child essentially as a commodity. Another way that this might show up is through projection. So, in the beginning, we talked about what it is to be, what it means to provide good mothering. One of those things was providing a mirror, right? The fragmented aspect distorts this dynamic because of its frequency field into projection rather than mirroring. It's part of their system and how they operate. It's not bad or wrong, just a lower level of consciousness, quite literally. So, what happens is instead of mirroring, the relationship is based on projection and unwarranted assumptions, usually. So, she might project her needs or her feelings onto you instead of seeing you and your needs and your feelings. She might tell you that you're too sensitive. And this is really just because she can't handle your big feelings. She might tell you that you're so selfish. And this is really just because she has a need for you to be selfless for her only, repetitively, to the point of complete and total self abandonment. That's what she desires from you. And unfortunately, there are different degrees of this, right? It's on a spectrum. But unfortunately, this is the reality of a lot of mother daughter relationships. And if we do not check it, we cannot move on from it and create relationships that actually support us. She might also say things like, you're difficult when you don't comply with what she needs. And it's really just this overall energy of complete selfishness to the point of to the point of neglect. And this all happens because of Achamoth's distorted perception. She literally cannot see clearly because she's fragmented. It's like looking through fly eyes or something like that, right? It's actually crazy how this shows up. I invite you to reflect on these and notice how these may have shown up in your childhood or may still be showing up for you. This might also look like emotional enmeshment. This is something that I call emotional incest. essentially it's your job to regulate her nervous system. It's your job to become her therapist, her partner, or her parent, and provide emotionally for her, be her emotional anchor. You can't have your own emotional life separate from hers. She needs to know all the things, she needs to be involved in all the things. This is Achamoth's deep fear and terror of separation, because she's already separated from her own wholeness. She then tries to attempt to cling to you to create a sense of wholeness. But in reality, what this does is ends up siphoning your wholeness from yourself and creating that distorted relationship and what you might feel somatically as an energetic cord or negative habits. And this is all of your negative habits that happen as a result of this wounding is a normal response to abuse. No matter where you're at on the spectrum, it's abuse, okay? We're going to call it out. We're going to call it what it is. It may not be intentional, it doesn't matter, okay? Without your recognition of it actually being harmful to you and calling it what it is, abuse, you will not allow yourself to move out of those negative habits or seeking out those negative relationships because you have not identified where that habit is coming from, which is the wound, which needs to be named and reclaimed. It's not always easy, okay? And that's why we tap into and plug into spaces like this so that we can do this work and feel fully supported in the process. This might also, the mother wound in the Achamoth transmission, which when I say that is really, it's like her transmitting the Achamoth wound to you. It might also look like a rage, a sense of rage, or a sense of collapse when you actually show up as yourself and you show up authentically. Maybe you express your needs that don't serve her and she rages or withdraws. Maybe your authentic self comes through, right? And when it does, it threatens her false self. And so she'll, in some way, retaliate. It might be rage, it might be collapse. I noticed this in my own experience. Sometimes it's like copying, like literally like blatant copying, because she's so threatened by your authentic self that her false sense of self doesn't have anything to grasp onto. And so then it goes into that grasping phase again. She might also punish you for being too much or not enough, whether that's emotionally or through withdrawal or through lack of intimacy. But the thing is, it's not your fault. This is Achamoth's defense against her own shadow, against what she isn't willing to see. And because your wholeness reminds her of fragmentation, of her fragmentation, she literally cannot tolerate the interactions with you. And because all of these things happen, because it's shown to you, it's mirrored to you essentially, you internalize Achamoth. You inherit the fragmentation and you learn to operate from your wounded aspect. You learn that this is normal, right? And it's a pattern. Unless you break the cycle, the Achamoth wound continues to be passed down and passed down and passed down. And this separation, this internal energetic separation, is what causes separation from our wholeness, which is our happiness, which is well-being. Okay? So this is literally what prevents us from living a life that feels good and pleasurable and fulfilling. And so your inheritance then becomes operating from this wounded aspect. And so you might shapeshift depending on who you're with, or you might perform your personality instead of being real with who you are. You might have a sense of conditional self-worth, like you only validate yourself when you do so much or when you give so much, right? You're not inherently valuable. You have to do in order to receive. And that's not necessarily the case. And you split into acceptable parts and shadow parts. You split your psyche. So you continue to operate from that split dynamic, which again is what creates a lot of the issues. You also tend to become desperate for external validation. You might feel terrified of being your full self, right? Like there's real you hiding somewhere. You might sabotage when things are going well. You might not be able to receive love, even if it's genuine and offered. And ultimately, you become fragmented, just like she is. Let's back up a little. This is the intergenerational Achamoth transmission. Wounded mothers creating wounded children, and so on and so forth. Unless someone breaks the cycle, unless someone says, I will integrate my Achamoth, I will return to Sophia, I will remember my wholeness. And if you're here, that someone, it's you. Let that land. Where does it hit you in your body? Does your heart feel like it's grieving? Like the recognition of realizing that your mother was a Achamoth and that you have become a Achamoth? Is your belly angry? Like you're mad because you didn't choose this and it wasn't fair? Does your throat have something to say? Like, wow, I can finally name this. I can finally own this as my experience and move on from it. It's important to bring awareness to what our body feels as we have these conversations, not to fix it or to, try and get around it or whatever, but just to feel it, just to be present with it. Because your body, through recognition, is processing this intergenerational wounding right now. And it's important for us to honor that. And I want to, as we recognize those feelings, I want to invite in faith and hope as well. Because the Gnostic story doesn't end with Achamoth suffering in exile. The story actually is primarily about Achamoth's return to Sophia. And the thing is, she doesn't, in order to return, she doesn't deny her fragmentation. She doesn't try and downplay her experience, like, oh, it wasn't that bad. She doesn't try to forgive everything with love and light. And she certainly doesn't feel like she's going to fake it till she makes it. Okay. She returns to Sophia through direct knowing, through gnosis. by recognizing her true nature, recognizing that she is Sophia even in her fragmentation, by grieving what was lost, by naming the wound and feeling the pain, by reclaiming her exiled parts, all of those parts that she split off into different aspects of herself, and by remembering the wholeness of the pleroma, knowing that she came from wholeness and will return to wholeness. Achamoth doesn't become Sophia by erasing her woundedness. She becomes Sophia and becomes whole by integrating the wound. The fragmentation becomes part of the wisdom. The suffering becomes medicine. The wound becomes greatest gift. This is the path of radical acceptance. And to be clear, we're not accepting what happened so that we can move on. It's not that simple, okay? It's about accepting all of the different parts of you, the wounded parts, the performing parts, the fragmented parts, the parts of you that act out the bad habits, the shadow parts, and recognizing them as equally divine as all of the good parts. Because when you can hold Sophia and Achamoth simultaneously, when you can say, I am both wounded and whole, and when you can accept the fragmentation as part of your journey, not as some mistake or some tragedy that happened, that's when you invite in integration. You become Pistis Sophia, faithful wisdom, the one who descended and returned. And that is what we're here to practice together today. So we're going to be moving from the story to the application. Okay, let's take a break before we move into that fully because I have a lot to go into and I want to make sure that we're all able to be fully present. So let's go ahead and take a break. Let's do a 3-minute break and we'll come back, get some water. Go ahead and go to the bathroom. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. Now I invite you to just hand on heart, maybe hand on your belly. We're going to move from story into application. So, just a reminder, stay connected to your body, allow your heart and the subtleness of your subtle body to create revelation and space for you as we move through the rest of this transmission. And if old wounds do arise, that is perfectly okay. It's actually really the point, okay? Any activation just means that the wound is coming up to be seen, to be felt, and integrated. I trust that you will be supported in the unraveling. I want to get really specific about how Achamoth energy might show up in narcissistic family systems. So, Achamoth is really the mother in a narcissistic family system, and it's the driving factor of the narcissistic family system, which is ironic because a lot of people see narcissism as an inherently masculine thing. And in actuality, it all stems from the feminine, as we will talk about in our Father Wound Masterclass. But the core dynamic in a narcissistic family system is that the mother or the primary caregiver is operating from the fragmented self, from her Achamoth aspect. And therefore, she cannot provide the mirroring, the attunement, and the holding that creates secure attachment. And so, what this might look like is the Achamoth mother might have a false self mandate. She might say things like, be who I need you to be, reflect well on me, don't have needs that inconvenience me, regulate my emotions for me. And so as a child, you learn that your authentic self is not acceptable, that you must create that false self that pleases her, and your worth is conditional based on your performance of that false self. And the Gnostic parallel shows us that just as Achamoth creates distorted forms from her wounding, the narcissistic mother creates a distorted version of you, the false self, which you either have to live up to, which is impossible, or you fail at doing and then are ridiculed for that. This may also show up as the scapegoat or the golden child. So, in narcissistic systems, children often get split into different roles, one being the golden child and one being the scapegoat. The golden child reflects the mother's idealized image. And the golden child must be perfect. They can't show weakness, they have to carry the family's good projection. In the Gnostic worldview, the child becomes Achamoth's attempt to return to the pleroma through achievement or perfection, but it's a false return because it's based on performance instead of that actual authentic connection and wholeness. The scapegoat carries the mother's disowned shadow. They get blamed for everything. They absorb the family's bad projection. They can't do anything right. And then from the Gnostic lens, the child becomes the repository for Achamoth's grief, her rage, and her terror. It's all the aspects that she can't acknowledge in herself. Both children, or all children, become fragmented. Both end up operating from Achamoth consciousness, even though it may show up differently. Neither of them are really allowed to be whole and actually embody Sophia consciousness. We might also see this showing up as emotional incest or parentification because the wounded mother might use the child as her emotional support, like you become her therapist. She might utilize you as her identity, like you exist to make her look good. She may utilize you as her purpose, and she, as a result, might live through you and want to do and almost like want to be you in some way. This is Achamoth's desperate clinging because she is separated from her own source and needs something to fill that void from within her. If you grew up in this dynamic, you might have learned that you exist to serve her emotional needs and that your feelings don't matter and that you're responsible for her happiness. When you become enmeshed with Achamoth instead of connected to Sophia as a result of this emotional incest and parentification, your job inherently becomes to fix the wounded mother instead of actually focusing on yourself and creating an identity for yourself and a life for yourself and a legacy for yourself and becoming whole yourself, right? And all of these can play out in the same relationship too. At some point, you may experience gaslighting and reality distortion because narcissistic mothers often deny your reality. They say that it didn't happen. They might rewrite history and tell you that you're remembering something wrong. They might project their feelings onto you and say that you're the one that's angry, even though they're the one that's exhibiting angry energy. This is Achamoth's distorted perception. She is so fragmented that she literally cannot see reality clearly, right? And the child or you learn that you can't trust your own perception, that your reality doesn't matter, that you must be crazy. You might even start thinking that you're like schizophrenic or something. But this is the demiurge's lie, the lie that says you're not divine, you're broken. And the wounded mother transmits this lie because she believes it about herself. And so the result is that you inherit that Achamoth energy. So by the time that you're an adult, you're operating from fragmented consciousness. You don't know who you really are because you performed for so long that you lost yourself. You're terrified of being too much or not enough. And you compulsively people please and shapeshift. You struggle with boundaries because you were never allowed to have them. You're hypervigilant to others' emotional states because that's how you learn to survive. You feel like an imposter in your own life because you don't even know who you really are. You attract narcissistic partners and friends because you're so familiar with that Achamoth energy, and you end up sabotaging yourself when things are going well. You can't receive love or care even when it's offered because you're addicted to earning your worth through achievement. This is Achamoth's consciousness. This is the mother wound. And it's not your fault, right? It's not the mother's fault. She inherited it too. But it is for you to heal. Okay, I know that this is a lot, but check in with your nervous system. Are you still in your window of tolerance or are you activated? If you're feeling overwhelmed, that's okay. You can place both hands on your heart, take 3 slow breaths, take a minute, pause, come back to this when you feel you have more capacity. And I also want you to recognize that coming up on a wall does not mean that you have to stop either. Maybe say to yourself, I'm safe, I'm here. This is just information that's arising for me to see. If you need to pause the recording and come back later, that's completely valid. Your nervous system gets to decide what is able to be metabolized, and it will tell you very clearly, I promise. So, okay, I know you're like, we've really established what Achamoth energy is, and wow, I can really see the monster that the Achamoth is. So how do I return from this energy, from the fragmented, from the wounded, to my Sophia consciousness, to wholeness and integration? Psychology offers the lens of reparenting yourself, doing inner child work, building secure attachment through therapy, setting boundaries with narcissistic family members, and developing an authentic self. We do a lot of that inside of the Dragon's Den, and all of it is valuable. All of it works on some level. All of it is part of the process. But the Gnostic framework adds something psychology often misses, which is this layer of radical acceptance of the fragmentation itself. So it's not about needing to fix the fragmentation or getting rid of the false self or needing to heal the wound so it goes away, but rather utilizing it as a guidance system for knowing where you're at energetically. So if your false self is arising, okay, that might be a sign that you're around narcissistic energies or that you're embracing narcissistic energy in a way that isn't supportive for the highest good of all. If you're acting out of wounding, maybe it's because that wound is activated, right? And so this allows us to tell the story a little bit differently, that it allows us to notice that your fragmentation is actually part of the journey, that your false self protected you when you needed protection and may still arise to provide that protection until you create new systems for yourself. The wound becomes then part of your wholeness, not detriment to it, but an aspect of it. The paradox is that you cannot force this integration. You can only allow it. You can't make yourself whole. As I said before, this is an unraveling, right? You can only remember that you've already been whole, that you've always been whole. Even in that fragmentation, even as it cameth, even in the wound, you are still Sophia. Okay? This is the really at the root of the entire teaching. You, right now, fragmented, wounded, performing, split, you are still Sophia. You are still a goddess. You are still light. The fragmentation isn't something that you need to get rid of in order to become whole. The fragmentation is an aspect of your wholeness. Just as Achamoth is not separate from Sophia, she is Sophia in her descended form. Your wounded self is not separate from your divine self. Your human self is not separate from your divine self. Your false self is not something to destroy, it's something that you get to integrate. The ego is not something to destroy, it is something to integrate, to wield, to utilize as a tool. Your mother wound is not a problem to solve. It is wisdom to reclaim. Okay. This is the art of radical acceptance. When you can hold this both and consciousness, when you can really own that you are wounded and you are whole in the same breath, when you can harness that spectrum of polarity, integration will happen for you organically through allowing it to happen. This is gnosis. This is direct knowing, remembering your true nature. It's remembering that you are Sophia, that you always have been, even in your Achamoth form. So now I want to provide you with some practices to actually allow you to experience this understanding that we've established intellectually, somatically, because that's really where the real integration happens, not in the mind, but in the body. That's where the unraveling actually takes place. So, another ground in check, feet flat on the floor, spine lengthened, heart open, belly soft. Let's take 3 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, making a sound on the exhale if that feels good. Okay, so the first practice that we're going to do is going to be meeting a Achamoth. I want you to be able to find a comfortable position, either sitting or lying down, and just close your eyes if that feels safe. You can also just keep a soft gaze if that feels more comfortable. And from this space, I want you to take a few deep breaths and imagine yourself descending down through layers of consciousness, down through time, into the earth, down into the place where your wounded self lives. This might show up as your childhood bedroom, or a dark cave, or a small closet where you used to hide. Anywhere that represents your Achamoth aspect, the fragmented, wounded, exiled part of you. It might show up in the form of a memory. And from this third party perspective in that space, you see her, your Achamoth. She might look like you did as a child, or maybe she looks scared, like a small version of your adult self. She might be formless, just a feeling of pain or grief or terror. And instead of trying to fix her or save her or make her feel better, I want you to make eye contact with her. Just see her. Really look at how her energy is showing up. Notice what she's doing, what she's feeling, what she needs. And after you've built that connection, say to her, I see you. I see your pain. I see your fragmentation. I see how hard you've been trying to survive. And honestly, I'm not here to fix you or change you or make you different. I'm here to say that you are part of me. You are part of my wholeness. I accept you. Your woundedness is sacred. Your fragmentation is wisdom. Your pain is medicine. I accept you exactly as you are. And to be clear, I'm not accepting you so that you can heal or so that I can heal. But I accept you because you are part of me. And I am learning to accept all of me. You don't have to change for me to love you. You don't have to heal for me to claim you. You are mine, and I am yours, and we are whole together. Let yourself feel whatever arises. This might bring tears, maybe a sense of grief for the part of you that's been exiled, maybe anger at the system that's made you fragment, maybe a sense of relief washes over you as you allow yourself to finally be seen. Maybe you feel a sense of resistance because you feel like this is too vulnerable. And maybe you don't feel anything at all. Maybe you still feel numb, and that's okay too. Recognition is key here. Whatever you do feel, let it move. Your body knows how to process this. Place one or both hands on your heart and breathe with this sensation as it arises. You have completed your healing process. Again, if you need to pause and sit with the emotions that have arisen, I invite you to do so. We're going to move on to our second practice of this workshop, which is working with your Achamoth emotional loop. And this may have arisen as a result of connection with your Achamoth aspect, or it might be something that you tap back into later when you have more clarity. Wherever you're at right now is perfect. I trust that you will receive the medicine you need. This next part might be the most valuable practice in this entire masterclass. Before we get into it, feel free to drop in the chat, share whatever you're feeling. This is a space for you to be fully embodied in your expression. Maybe you desire to journal. Go ahead and take the next step that feels most aligned for you. If you're here and ready for the process to continue, we're going to together map your unique fragmentation pattern. This is the emotional loop that helps keep you stuck in Achamoth consciousness. And it's actually a cycle that your nervous system has created to avoid feeling the core wound. I identified this within myself after doing some of this work, and I was like, whoa, this is so helpful for actually understanding my lower aspects and how to work with them rather than just going immediately into self-deprecation. So let me show you what I mean by my own example. My loop was based on a fear of loss and abandonment. So I had a core fear that would arise, right? And my loop was anger emerging. And I felt this protective rage against the threat of loss. So I would become really angry with my situation or my scenario because I was afraid to face the truth about it, because that would mean I would lose it. And so instead of allowing myself to actually feel the anger and recognize what changes needed to be made and what I needed to let go of, I would move into self-blame and doubt. So instead of exerting my anger outward and utilizing it as the fuel that it's meant to be, my anger would then become a weapon towards myself. So the anger turned inward. I started to self-deprecate. I would say things like, it's my fault, I'm the problem, like, what's wrong with me? Self-pity, all the things, right? And from that space, I would allow that momentum to build so much because I wasn't willing to face what I needed to face, right? I wasn't willing to be honored. I wasn't willing to honor the truth. And then because I couldn't hold the emotional momentum that suppressing this truth carried, I then began to project. I couldn't hold my own self blame, so I projected it onto others. Like, oh, actually, you're the problem. Actually, it's your fault. Playing on that line of polarity again, right? Allowing it to build more momentum. So it's essentially feeding itself, feeding this identity, feeding this habit loop, feeding this energy loop, and creating this momentum in my life. Then I would move into greed and grasping, trying to control and accumulate and hold on to prevent the loss. This is my Achamoth pattern playing out. From there, I'd move into further avoidance, numbing out, distracting myself, disconnecting myself so I don't have to feel the original fear, my fear of loss and abandonment, which, by the way, already happened. The loss already happened, which was not being able to get my needs met as a child. The loss already happened. This loop was created because I didn't want to face the reality that this loss had already happened. Inside of the Dragon's Den group chat in the somatic practices, we just did one for Moon 2. And this practice might help you to identify what truths you might be avoiding. Highly recommend if you are looking for more clarity on what your emotional loop might be that might be keeping you locked in the identity that you're currently living. And so because I continued to avoid, then the anger would resurface because I never dealt with that core fear, and the loop just continues to repeat. The only thing that breaks the loop is radical acceptance of the anger and what it was showing me or what it is showing me about my needs. When I can stay with the anger instead of moving into self-blame, I discover why I'm angry. Maybe I'm angry because I need connection and I'm scared I won't get it, or because I've already lost it in some way. Maybe I'm angry because I matter and my needs matter. Maybe I'm angry because something important is at stake. Whatever the reasoning for the anger is, it doesn't matter. The anger isn't the problem. The anger is the information telling you and giving you insight into how to utilize the momentum into action. But I was taught by my mother, my Achamoth mother, that anger isn't safe. And so I learned to cycle through blame, projection, greed, avoidance, instead of just feeling and using the anger. So now it's your turn. I want you to identify an emotion or a core fear that you have. Maybe it's an emotion that you're afraid of feeling, grief, rage. Get out your paper and pen, and we're going to map your unique pattern. We're going to start by identifying your core fear. What are you most afraid of feeling or experiencing? Some common core fears that arise from the mother wound are abandonment or being left, being too much and rejected, being not enough and ignored, being seen as the bad one, maybe a loss of love or connection, being consumed or losing yourself, being controlled or having no agency. Write it down, name it. My core fear is, maybe you want to pause this and think about it. That's cool too. Give you a few moments for that. Once you've established your core fear, we're going to begin to map your emotional loop. What emotions or behaviors do you cycle through to avoid feeling that core fear? So, in order to track this, you might ask, what's the first emotion that shows up when the core fear is triggered? Where does that emotion lead? Do I turn it inward? Do I go outward? Do I numb it? What do you do in response? Do you blame yourself, blame others, perform, withdraw, control, people please, rage, collapse? Where does that behavior lead? What's the next emotion or coping mechanism? And how do you eventually cycle or circle back to the beginning? You might have more components than I did on my loop. But you can draw it out with the core fear at the top, the first protective response, the next, the next, the next, the next, until you get back to the initial protective response. And even if you aren't able to do this right now, it's important to have this framework in your mind so that when it does arise, when it is the time for you to do this work, it will happen more seamlessly for you. Once you've mapped your emotional loop, it's important to ask yourself where you might have learned this loop. Did your mother cycle through these same emotions? Were you punished for feeling certain emotions? Did you have to manage her emotional states instead of your own? What emotional states were safe in your family versus the ones that were forbidden? What happened if you expressed those forbidden emotions? You might write this out in a sentence like, I learned to avoid your core fear, anger, or abandonment, right? By cycling through these emotions, because in my family, the way that I wrote it down sounds something similar. I had the realization that greed kept me safe for so many years because it was my response and relief from injustice. I became mean to deal with the pain and do something with the energy that was being given to me. Anger kept me safe from realizing loss. I was so wrapped up in the cycle, I couldn't let anyone in. And I'll provide a framework for this so you can reference it and really go through the process yourself as well. So an example of what you might write out might be something similar to what I just read, or I learned to avoid abandonment by cycling through anger, to self-blame, to projection, to greed, to avoidance, because in my family, anger meant my mother would rage back or withdraw her love, so I couldn't stay with my anger long enough to use it. No matter what your loop looks like, the breakthrough point is the point in the cycle where your loop doesn't stand a chance against radical acceptance. So, where in your loop could radical acceptance break the cycle? For me, it's at the anger stage. If I can stay with anger and I can accept it as information instead of immediately moving to self blame or self deprecation, the whole loop dissolves. So, in order to identify this breakthrough point, you can ask yourself, which emotion in my loop am I most afraid of? Which one do I try to skip over the fastest? Which one, if I could actually feel and accept it, would give me the information that I need? That's your breakthrough point. So maybe you might write down something like, if I could radically accept my anger, it would show me that I have needs that matter. If I could radically accept my grief, it would show me what I truly lost and let me mourn it. If I could radically accept my fear, it would show me what I'm really protecting. If I could radically accept the shame, it would show me the parts of me that I've exiled. This loop, this is your Achamoth pattern. This is how the fragmentation maintains itself through intergenerational transmission, by cycling through emotions instead of feeling the core wound. And the path to Sophia, to integration, is to inject yourself at that breakthrough point. Feel the emotion that you've been avoiding and let it show you what it knows. Have a conversation with it. Let anger tell you what you need. Let grief let you know what you lost. Let fear allow you to see what matters to you. Let shame show you what parts of you still haven't accepted. Radical acceptance of whatever emotion is at your breakthrough point breaks that loop. And each time the loop tries to start again, because it inevitably will, it's built so much momentum, and you pause at that breakthrough point and feel instead of move through the cycle, that's how you embody this shift and move out of Achamoth patterning and into Sophia wisdom and wholeness. Okay, that was a lot. That was big. I'm going to give you resources to be able to do this practice on your own because I know that it's a lot. I know you might not have been able to do it sitting here because surely for me, like, I wouldn't have been able to be like, oh, what is my core fear? Like, I don't know everything, bro. So yeah, you kind of just got to do with how you best work with energy. So if you were able to create the loop, that's beautiful. If not, I'm going to provide a worksheet that will walk you through it. But I want you to notice what's alive in your body right now. What is alive for you moving through that process? Are things coming up? Are you remembering things? Are you recognizing different patterns and how they might have affected you? All of this is beautiful information for you to take and move with. Okay, so now we're going to do something a little counterintuitive. We're going to thank and integrate your false self or your ego. Most healing modalities and new age practices will say, get rid of the false self, get rid of the ego, find your authentic self. But your false self isn't actually the enemy, it's part of you that learned to survive. And it's important that we reclaim it. So, this third practice is going to be reclaiming the false self. I want you to bring to your mind your false self, this Achamoth aspect that you witnessed, the performing you, the people-pleasing you, the shape-shifting you, the part of you that learned to be who others needed you to be, the part of you who learned to suppress your real feelings and earn through achievement, the version of you who puts everyone else first. And instead of rejecting this part, we're going to honor it. I want you to say to this false self, thank you. Thank you for protecting me when I wasn't safe to be myself. I like to see this as like the shell of a crab, the equivalent of a shell of a crab on myself. So that's kind of what you're thinking. Thank you for protecting me when I wasn't safe to be myself. Thank you for learning to perform so that I could survive. Thank you for reading the room, for shape-shifting, for people-pleasing, because that's what kept me alive in a narcissistic system. You did your job. You kept me safe. And now I'm ready to integrate you. That doesn't mean I'm rejecting you as not the real me or attempting to get rid of you. I want to invite you to integrate with me as part of the real me. I want to reclaim you as part of the real me because I am both the performing self and the authentic self, the wounded self and the whole self, Achamoth and Sophia. All of it is me. All of it is real. All of it is sacred. I don't have to choose anymore. I don't have to split anymore. I can be all of me. I can harness the entire spectrum of polarity. And bring awareness to your body. Notice where you've been holding that split. Where in your body do you feel the tension of trying to be authentic while suppressing the performing parts? Maybe you can't speak your full truth and you feel it in your throat. Maybe your heart feels divided and you feel it in your chest. Maybe your belly is holding the split. Maybe your spine is rigid, trying to hold it all together. And now, just with your breath, imagine softening that place, breathing into it, recognizing it, seeing it, breathing into the place where the split lives and saying, it's safe to be both. It's safe to be all of me. I don't have to choose anymore. Let your body fully receive that permission. And now we're going to invite in the both and body scan, where we hold Achamoth and Sophia simultaneously in your body. So start with your feet. Bringing your awareness and psychic energy toward the bottom of your feet. Recognizing that my feet are both wounded. They've walked painful paths and they are divine. They carry me forward. Moving to your legs, noticing my legs are both weak. Sometimes I can't stand, and they're also strong. They've held me up through everything. Arising into your belly, noticing that your belly is both holding trauma, because the gut knows what the mind denies, and it's holding wisdom. It is the seat of intuition. Moving upward into your heart, noticing that your heart is both broken, wounded by lack of true love, and simultaneously whole, because it is love itself and always has been. Moving into your throat, knowing that it is both silenced from times where it couldn't speak its truth, and it is truth itself, the voice of Sophia wanting to emerge through you. Moving up into your third eye, noticing that your perception is both distorted, fragmented from fragmented and gaslit from reality. And it's also clear. You can see the truth when you trust yourself. Ascending fully into the crown, knowing you are both separated from source. You are a Achamoth in exile, and I am source. I am Sophia remembering herself. Now take a moment to feel your whole body. I am wounded and I am whole. I am both fragmented and integrated. I am both Achamoth and Sophia. I am both human and divine. All of it, all of me. I accept it all as sacred and holy. That was beautiful. That was a lot. Take a deep breath as we transition from practice to integration. I want you to notice what's different in your body compared to where we started. Is there more spaciousness, more emotion moving, more tension releasing, more confusion? That's okay. It's part of the process sometimes. More clarity, maybe. Trust in your process, trust in your unraveling. This integration journey is not a process of just doing the practices once and now you're healed, or never feeling fragmentation again, or feeling like your wounding is resolved forever. Because integration is a spiral, it's not a destination. You can expect moments of clarity where you recognize fragmentation and choose differently. You might experience grief waves as you mourn what you didn't get from your mother and what you've been carrying alone. You might experience rage activation as you recognize how the narcissistic system harmed you and your mother and her mother before her. There might be a tender reclaiming of parts of yourself that you've exiled, your needs, your feelings, your authentic expression. You might experience boundary setting and relationship shifts and capacity building to hold both, and being able to love your mother and recognizing the harm and abuse and wounding that came from her. There might be a sense of identity confusion as you shed the false self and don't quite know who the real you is yet. And you might also feel moments of profound peace where you feel whole, even if it's just for a moment. The work is messy, it's nonlinear, and it's sacred, okay? And it's important to recognize that you're never going to come to a place where you say something like, I've forgiven my mother, so I never think about it anymore. That's suppression, okay? Focusing only on the positive is bypassing, okay? Denying the presence of this harm, denying the presence of grief, and attempting to move forward is avoidance. And it's never going to be perfect, right? You're never going to not be triggered by something. But you can hold the wound and your wholeness simultaneously. You can set boundaries even when it's uncomfortable. You can see your mother's woundedness with compassion and not take responsibility for it. You can allow yourself to grieve what you didn't get instead of pretending that it didn't matter. You can begin to notice when you fragment and gently return to yourself and let your body feel and release instead of trying to control everything. You can become your own good enough mother, mirroring, attuning, and holding yourself. And I invite you to apply integration practices outside of just this class. Make it a way of life. For a morning practice, you might do a recognition of what energy is present for you. And I'll share more in-depth versions of these practices, but just as an overview, right? You might begin to write weekly letters to your mother wound, to your Achamoth aspect. And I highly recommend that you invite in somatic release practices and integration rituals, whether that be creating safety, journaling, moving with these emotions. And I also want to recognize that this doesn't mean that you have to forgive your mother, because radical acceptance of your Achamoth, your fragmentation, is not the same as accepting your mother's behavior. You can accept the wounded nature of everything and the fragmentation as a survival response, and accept that as part of your journey, and also not forgive your mother, not allow contact, maintain boundaries, recognize that what happened was harm, even if it was unintentional. Because integration doesn't require reconciliation with the persons who wounded you. It requires reconciliation with the parts of you that fragmented in response. Forgiveness, if it comes after that integration, not as a prerequisite for it. And if you do decide to forgive, that's going to look unique for you, right? If you feel guilty claiming that you were wounded when your mother did her best, this is quite literally the Achamoth trap, feeling like you're betraying your mother by naming the wound. The truth is, your mother likely was doing her best, and her best wasn't good enough to prevent wounding. She was wounded by her mother, and that doesn't erase the impact that it had on you. She may not have intended to harm you, and you were still harmed. All of these can be true simultaneously. And naming this wound, naming this abuse, naming this happening, this feeling, this sensation isn't about blaming your mother. It's about seeing what is so that you can integrate it. Denial of the wound is how the fragmentation continues. Acknowledgement is how the healing begins. Is how the integration sustains. And integration is messy. It's not performative. Okay. So if you feel like you should be over this by now, if you feel like you should be more spiritually evolved or like you should force the forgiveness before you even decided to look at the anger and what it was telling you, if you decide to maintain relationships that harm you because boundaries feel threatening, or if you pretend like you're not triggered when you are, you're performing healing. And integration looks like recognizing that this is a lifelong process and you're still working with it, and that's okay. You're not rushing to transcendence. You're allowed to get angry and set boundaries and speak your truth, even if it's messy and raw. You're allowed to choose relationships that honor your wholeness and admit when you're triggered and tend to yourself. If you're still trying to look healed for someone else, for society, that's your false self, a Achamoth, still running the show. And if you're allowing yourself to be a hot mess while tending to your wounds with compassion, that's how you're honoring the Sophia that lives within you. If you're a Achamoth feels like it's too big to integrate, too vast, if you feel like you're too broken, I want you to remember that you're not broken, because broken means that you can't be fixed. You're beyond repair. You're fragmented. You're in pieces that can be gathered back together. And you don't have to integrate all at once. You're not trying to swallow the ocean in one gulp, right? You're integrating this one piece at a time. Small, sustainable integration. And if you fragment again, that's not failure, okay? It's being human. The goal isn't to never fragment or operate from the Achamoth. The goal is to notice and be aware of when you are operating from that state and why, and what it might be telling you and showing you, and returning to yourself. I want you to notice what's alive in your system after this class here today. You've just received a lot: cosmology, psychology, practices, permission. Your nervous system is likely integrating. And that is beautiful. And I'm so excited for the work that you get to embark on in continuation of this process throughout the entire den. This is just the beginning. Before we close out here today, let's bring in a sense of grounding once more. You're here, you're present. And let's just acknowledge Achamoth. Let's place both hands on our belly, where the wound of Achamoth usually showcases itself. And let's recognize her. I see you, Achamoth. I see my wounded parts. I see my fragmented self. You are part of me. You are sacred. Moving to the heart, recognizing the Sophia that lives within us. I remember you, Sophia. I remember my wholeness. I remember I am divine. Even in my wounding, I am whole. And with one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly, Let's recognize them together. I am both Achamoth and Sophia. I am both wounded and whole. I am both fragmented and integrated. All of me is welcome. All of me is sacred. All of me is coming home. And with our last few breaths here together in this space, let's just take some recognition and appreciation for the time that we've shared here together today. For everyone that has shown up. We are changing the field. We are breaking the intergenerational transmission of the Achamoth wound. You came to this masterclass for a reason. Maybe you didn't even know why you clicked on it, but your soul knew. Your Achamoth knew that she was ready to be seen. Your Sophia knew that she was ready to be remembered. And now you have the map. The mother wound isn't your fault, and the fragmentation surely isn't a mistake. And Achamoth isn't something to get rid of. She's something to integrate. And truthfully, integration does not happen in one masterclass. It happens over and over, spiral after spiral, as you notice when you fragment, as you map your emotional loops, as you tend to your wounded parts, as you practice radical acceptance at that breakthrough point, and as you allow your body to rewire to remember your wholeness. This is the work. This is the return. This is Priestess Sophia finding her way home. And yes, you, right here, right now, are Priestess Sophia, descended, fragmented, and returning to wholeness. For questions about the work presented here or deeper exploration, tap into our Dragon's Den community chat and be sure to deepen your experience by thoroughly working with the source material presented throughout the courses inside of the Dragon's Den. We also have tons of resources inside of our Google Drive. The Witch's Coven has a lot of resources for understanding your soul and the pathway toward walking towards wholeness and why fragmentation may have arisen in the first place. All of the courses support you in working with the mother wound and the father wound, and hopefully this provided a beautiful foundation for you to move through the portal with ease, reverence, love, respect, and wisdom. I love you so much, and I will see you in our next masterclass, the Demiurge and the Father Wound.